If China or any other country is charging us 100 or 200% tariff or tax, then we will charge them 100 or 200%.
The story of tariffs, trade wars, and court battles has just taken another dramatic turn. A federal court has ruled that most of the tariffs imposed under former President Donald Trump were unlawful. This decision not only reshapes the conversation around trade policy, but also raises questions about presidential power, the future of U.S.-China relations, and the balance between politics and law and economic policy. Today, we're diving into what the court said, why it matters, how it affects businesses and consumers, and what comes next in this ongoing saga. The backdrop: Trump's trade war. To understand why this ruling matters, we need to rewind to 2018. At the time, President Trump argued that the U.S. had been taken advantage of in global trade, especially by China. His administration accused Beijing of unfair practices, forced technology transfers, intellectual property theft, and massive state subsidies that gave Chinese companies an unfair edge. In response, Trump launched a sweeping trade war. Billions of dollars in tariffs were slapped on imported steel, aluminum, machinery, electronics, and everyday consumer goods. The idea was to punish China, protect American industries, and force new negotiations. But tariffs didn't just hit China. They rippled through the entire global supply chain, raising costs for U.S. companies that rely on imported parts, squeezing farmers caught in the crossfire, and increasing prices for consumers. The strategy was bold, controversial, and now, according to the courts, legally flawed. The court's decision. So what did the court actually decide? In plain terms, the judges ruled that most of the tariffs imposed during Trump's trade war went beyond the legal authority granted to the president. Under U.S. law, presidents do have broad power to impose tariffs in certain situations, such as national security threats or violations of trade agreements. But those powers are not unlimited. The court found that many of Trump's tariffs, particularly the later waves against China, were not properly justified under the statutes being used. The ruling essentially says, yes, presidents can act aggressively on trade, but they still have to follow the legal framework. And in this case, the Trump administration stretched the law too far. Why it matters legally? This is more than a technicality. The ruling draws a line in the sand on executive power. For decades, Congress has delegated enormous authority to the White House to act on trade. Trump used that authority like no president before him, applying tariffs at a scale that shook the global economy. The court's decision signals that there are limits. Presidents cannot simply declare a trade emergency and impose sweeping taxes on imports without clear legal grounding. That precedent could constrain not only Trump if he were to return to office, but also future presidents, Democrat or Republican, who might want to use tariffs as a political weapon. The economic fallout. For businesses, this ruling is huge. Companies that have spent years paying higher import costs may now see opportunities for refunds or policy changes. Industries from tech to retail have been lobbying for relief, arguing that tariffs force them to raise prices, cut jobs, or lose competitiveness. Farmers, too, felt the sting. China retaliated against U.S. agricultural exports, slamming soybeans, pork, and other staples. To cushion the blow, the federal government spent billions in subsidies. But many farmers say the damage is lasting. Consumers also bore the cost. Everything from washing machines to electronics became more expensive. While tariffs were sold as a tool to bring jobs back, studies suggest that the economic benefits were minimal compared to the costs. The political angle. Politically, this ruling could not come at a more sensitive time. Trump has long championed tariffs as a signature achievement, proof that he stood up to China and put America first. Critics argue they were reckless and self-defeating. With the court now weighing in, both sides have new ammunition. Supporters of free trade will say the decision proves Trump's approach was unlawful overreach. His loyalists will argue the courts are undermining a president who was simply protecting American workers. Meanwhile, President Biden has kept many of Trump's tariffs in place, wary of looking soft on China. The ruling raises pressure on his administration to either defend those tariffs in court or begin rolling them back. Global implications beyond U.S. borders. This decision is being watched closely. For China, The tariffs were a central grievance that fueled years of tension. If they are now deemed unlawful, it could change the negotiating table. Other countries, too, will take note. If American courts are willing to check presidential power on trade, it may signal a shift toward a more rules-based system. That could ease fears of sudden unilateral tariffs, but it might also make future negotiations trickier, since presidents will have less leverage to act quickly. What happens next? The ruling is not the final word. Appeals are almost certain, and the legal process could drag on. Even if the tariffs are ultimately struck down, unwinding them will be complex. There's also the question of money. If tariffs were unlawful, should the government refund billions collected from importers? Businesses are already lining up to make that case. The financial implications could be massive. At the same time, the White House will have to decide whether to continue defending tariffs that are now on shaky legal ground. The Biden administration is caught in a political bind, maintaining a tough stance on China while respecting the court's limits. The bigger picture. Ultimately, this ruling isn't just about tariffs. It's about the balance of power in American democracy. Should a president have sweeping authority to reshape the global economy with the stroke of a pen? Or should courts and Congress set clearer boundaries? Trump's trade war brought these questions into sharp focus. The court's decision is a reminder that even in matters of global economics, the rule of law still applies. Conclusion. The battle over Trump's tariffs is far from over, but this ruling marks a turning point. It challenges the legacy of one of Trump's most high-profile policies, raises tough questions for the Biden administration, and reshapes the future of U.S. trade power. For businesses, consumers, and workers who lived through the trade war, the decision could bring long-awaited relief or new uncertainty as the legal battles continue. And for the rest of us, it's a reminder of just how deeply politics, law, and economics are intertwined. The tariffs may have started as a weapon against China, but their real test is happening right here in American courts.